Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the channel.
Thanks for having me.
So there's been a lot of news breaking today. So hopefully we can go over that. But I want to tell the audience that we John has a new way that you can read his content, and that is he has a channel on X. The link is in the description of this video, and just click that link. But also, you can click the links to his website, and you'll be able to subscribe to his periodical and the readings. We'll go over what that all entails. But please click the links, subscribe, follow, help support John's work. So, John, as I do some of the admin behind the scenes here, take it away.
Yeah, the other thing I would add too is that the X format is really easy to read in all platforms. So, and you can also link, like with my website, it's literally like I've taken my website and put some of my articles up on X, and you can read it. The links are very good to also donate to subscribe to the full Hogue Prophecy Report. Um, And for any of those people who are wondering if I've been flashed by an alien UFO, it's just I was out in the sun a lot today. That's why I'm flushed. I'm trying to look like Tucker Carlson, I guess. Overly burnt. I don't think that'll get his ratings though. But anyway, yes. I imagine what's on a lot of people's minds is there peace about to break out in the Western Asian conflict? My answer to that is no. Yes. It's it's not, first off, this is terms of agreeing to negotiate is what they're finally come to this point. So all these 40 false starts that have happened over a few months is now going into another round of potentially false starts. Um, it's the so midnight in Western Asia, so it's probably now. This is I'm speaking here at 7:03 Pacific Standard, and it's 10:03 in Eastern, and so all hostilities should stop. So that's the first hurdle. This second hurdle is the Israelis have to cease fire all across Lebanon and end the fighting there. As one can imagine, the Zionists are beyond livid about this, but the and Trump has had one of his rich expletive-driven castigations very publicly about Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, not wanting to comply. And it's an interesting thing. There I don't know how many ways Donald Trump has got himself stuck in what is called a Hobson's choice, which is defined as you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I've never seen a leader so entrapped by all of his cabinet of yes men and women kind of telling him false tales about what's really going on, boosting his ego, boosting his narcissistic needs to be always told how wonderful and fantastic he is, that his doo-doo doesn't stink politically or otherwise. And and it's caught him really in a trap. Uh, that every which way he could try to get out. It kind of reminds me of the movie with Kevin Costner as a naval officer who fell in love with a woman who had also been a very important senator's mistress. And they had, when the guy found out that she was seeing somebody else, they had a fight. It was and the senator, not meaning to kill her, killed her by slapping her, and she fell back over this rail and went all the way down the stairwell to her bottom floor of the penthouse that he had given her. and accidentally, in a fit of rage, killed her. And so he had this gay, really well played by this guy who was a gay assistant who was ready to do anything to cover things up. And I won't divulge how far he goes with that. But Kevin Costner has to pretend. Um, I won't tell a lot of story, because the story's got, I'll just say it has fantastic twists. And I remember seeing it, I was flying back from, I think, Europe or something, and I watched it. And for another hour after, as a writer, I was trying to figure, is there any way out for this poor guy to get out of this mess? And after a couple hours of thinking about it, there really was no way out for Kevin Costner's character. I won't do any spoilers, but you got to see the film if you haven't seen it. It's marvelous, marvelous high jinks and stuff. So anyway, so in relation to Donald Trump, he's got so many traps that he's put himself in. Um, he is the amount to which he has let the Israeli government and Zionists kind of dominate his life. I mean, it's almost like it even happened with his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is a major contact in all of that. And he's got him working with Witkoff, who are, kind of, I would say, Mossad assets as well, working both sides of the issue. And um, so everything's absolutely insinuated with that. And then on top of that, even more, people don't talk about this enough, but the other problem is all the Christian nationalists, like that are all very gung-ho about Israel. But if you understand the whole Christian nationalist thing, I mean, most Israelis get this, is that the Christian nationals have this idea of interpreting the book of Revelation in a certain way. And of course, I'm well known since 1999, when I wrote From Propaganda to Armageddonomics, one of the chapters in my book, Messiahs, that was this beautiful coffee table book I produced in 1999, with lots of great illustrations and stuff. It basically had the premise that the book of Revelation is not about anything beyond the first century of the new millennium. It is basically its prophecies end with the millennium. The Christians' true millennium is a few years away, by the way, not 2000. It is around it is the year, the 1000th anniversary of the final year of Christ's ministry on earth, his passion, his death, and resurrection, which would then be in 2033. It'll be 1,000 years ago that happened. We know that date. We don't know when he was born. Some people think it was a few years into the previous millennium, but we do know that he did do the crucifixion thing and made birth of the whole Christian religion in the third and final year of his ministry, which was 2033 AD. No, sorry, 33 AD. And now it's 2000 years later. And so, there's a lot of religious fervor because of that. A lot of messianism is, if you think people are getting feverish with the messianism from this Palestinian Holocaust that has got the Israeli Zionists thinking about Amalek, thinking about wiping out their enemies, and seeing that this is the time, this is the point in their history where they have a chance to wipe out even Iran. So, and this is what Netanyahu has been using, and people have been riding with it. But now he's got Israel into 8 fronts, 8 wars, the eighth being the war, the psychological, propagandistic, and censorship war that he is waging on any Americans who say, hey, wait, Israel first. No, it's America first. It's like we are, and I don't know how many decades I've been saying that this would eventually happen, that Israel would always try to control its big, dumb American friend, to fight its wars and die in its wars for its strategic needs, not for America's. And you know, with everything, every abuse that happens in relationships, there eventually comes a time where the big dumb American nation is waking up to the fact that they're being exploited, that their sons and daughters have died by the tens of thousands to wage and die in wars that Israel tells it to fight for it. And that Christian nationalist group in the Senate and the House that are gung-ho about that because it's pretty insidious. Now, most Israelis understand this, that it's insidious, because these nationalists believe that we have to have these wars where Israel is being beset by all kinds of enemies, as their warped interpretation of the book of Revelation that has the Israel has to be at odds with all its neighbors, and then they will have a miraculous success because Christ will be coming back in the second coming. But the payoff, the price for Israel is that Christ is supposed to come down and say, "Hey, I am Emmanuel. I am the Emmanuel that you crucified 2,000 years ago. And now you must come to me or go into the lake of fire forever." This is this is what these Christian nationalists say. And when I hear nationalist in this day and age, I like to really qualify it as fascist. Just like I don't call Ukrainian nationalists of Azov or other people nationalists. That's to water it down. No, they're fascists. They're ethno-supremacist fascists who believe that their Slavic race is superior to other Slavic races, and it's the same ethno-supremacist thing that Zionism, which is another form of fascism, is, in a racial-based order of saying. I mean, I think I said it last week, is that how deep is the fascism going that Zionists call people who criticize their behavior and their killing of women and children, a million maybe, in Palestine, as, "Oh, you're an anti-Semite." But the funny thing is that they, in that statement, without saying it, they have denied the Semitic reality of their cousin, brother, sister Semites, which are Palestinians, which are Arabs in general, come from the same seed of Abraham. So even in that accusation thrown at people, that trope, they are erasing an entire cousin brother race of Semites as being Semites that they are murdering. So, it's a big mess. And I've often said that Netanyahu has really got the bull by the horns. He's spent his whole life dedicated to making the greater Israel happen. And he's probably right when he tells Israelis, "This is our one chance to make this happen." I mean, we're already we've beaten Hezbollah, we've isolated them from Iran. Of course, now they're not isolated because the same trails are so ancient that they're still getting the weapons from Iran, despite the fact that they put a puppet ISIS leader as now running an Islamic state that used to be Syria. And so, but he is so afraid, that Islamist is so afraid of what Israel might do as it's encroaching into Syria to make greater Israel, that he begged the Russians not to leave Larnaca and their bases in west on the coast of Mediterranean of Syria. He needs them there for a counterbalance. So the, to cut to the chase, this agreement, I won't go into all the labyrinth. A lot of you probably been watching all the possibilities that could come out of this agreement. The first milestone is overnight, whether they can stop even firing at each other, whether Israeli forces will, if in Lebanon, who are now committing another Holocaust against Semites, Lebanese Arab Semites. And it's looking very much like how the beginning of wiping out Gaza Strip looks. Um, the the Iranians are kind of going along with it, but I'm thinking they're not too trustful of how this is all going to go down. Um, and you know, Trump will probably do what he's done before. He'll go to bed on Air Force One as he's flying off to Europe right now. And he'll wake up after 2 hours of sleep, which is about 3 hours maximum, and he'll wake up and say, no, let's add a couple of more agreements to this. You know, he's so incontinent intellectually right now from his cognitive decline that, um, you know, I don't think he can hold on to agreements without adding something else. So, um, but Trump does have one power that he is empowered as president of the United States as the go-to guy for Zionists to do all their bidding is to shut it down. It's only happened once before. It might have happened with Eisenhower early in the 1950s, but I know for sure in 1982, when Israel decided to invade Lebanon and go after the Palestinian PLO forces that were encamped in Lebanon, Ronald Reagan sent troops with ill-advised. He never wanted to send those troops, but he was kind of convinced to send all those Marines as peacekeepers there. And hundreds of them got blown up, along with 50 or 60 French peacekeepers and others. And Ronald Reagan said, no, we're out of here. So he got American forces out of Lebanon. It was a good move. And he got on the phone and in 5 minutes said to Menachem Begin, I think was the prime minister in 1982. I might be wrong, but he was a Likud-nik, you know, just like Netanyahu. He basically said, pull them back. It's done. If you don't, we will cut you off of everything, assistance, civilian or military. It's time for us to kind of say, and he didn't say this directly, but sort of like he made it very clear who was the boss, who was ruling whom in this situation. And the Israelis pulled out, stopped the war. Sharon's forces came back into Israel. Game over. You know, the irony of it is that that fighting was what gave birth to Hezbollah, the Shia Arab Lebanese movement, resistance movement that has been resisting them occupying southern Lebanon for decades after that. And now they're still that karma that they've created is still there, still alive, and actually has risen from the defeat they had a few years back in this war to being even more formidable and learning from their mistakes. And it seems the Israelis are Israeli Defense Forces are capable of doing. The Israeli army is falling apart. It cannot, it's taking a lot of casualties and damage. It is revealing the weakness of Israel is it's too small a country to have such big National Socialist dreams of greater German Reich, greater Israel. And it is, and it's kind of, the threat is it's wearing itself down. The Israelis are now finally getting tired with Netanyahu because he's not coming through. He's saying, yeah, just one more push. Well, the push is not working. And this would be a perfect time for the president of the United States to call up Netanyahu and say, we got to get a clarity about this. You are not the boss of me. I am the boss of you. And he's got to pull a Ronald Reagan. He's got to say, look, we don't want to have to show who's really the boss here, but I can do in a few minutes, I can set if you don't say yes to this peace agreement and go through the process of negotiating it out, I can begin a process where we will cut Israel off from every assistance, especially military. You will run out of weapons. You want to keep bombing those people, you'll soon be without any weapons. This has to end. And, you know, the other thing he might do, uh, one of the other people that are really enchaining Trump is his largest donor, Miriam Adelson, who is not, I don't think she's an American citizen. I think she still remains Even though she was married to Adelson, who was an American citizen, she still remains a Israeli citizen. And then in an odd moment in public, Donald Trump one time said to her, and there's Miriam, yeah, she's really a great help, but I wonder which nation she's really wanting to help. He actually said that in public one time with everybody looking. And then she asked Miriam, do you want to become an American citizen? And Miriam said nothing. Her silence said no. And it was kind of a surprise, one of those Trumpian surprises when he kind of exposes somebody and it really hits. Like you're fake news. Well, you know, he was kind of indirectly saying you're fake American and you serve Israel first. And she didn't deny it to her credit. Well, he could use the powers of the presidency to have ICE and the FBI knocking on her door and saying you're under investigation for manipulating the United States in a war it doesn't want to fight. And he could turn the tables on her, maybe get her deported to Israel since she's not a citizen. And the other thing he could do is start an investigation with the FBI on AIPAC, and look at to what extent AIPAC has bought the Congress of the United States, literally our government. Of course, the problem is he's one of the most bought of them all, to the tune of $250 million from Adelson. But I mean, he's going to have to play the game of mea culpa to do this. So see, that stops him because if he's going to go after the 3 or 6 million that the senator of South Carolina gets, and a few hundred thousands to several millions that each congressman and woman gets, the fact that that election that took out the senator of Kentucky was such a rigged election with $35 million being spent to take him down because he was one of the few who didn't take money from AIPAC. Well, he could just say we have to relook at our relationship with AIPAC, whether AIPAC, why, the fact that AIPAC has not, like any other foreign agent, legally declared themselves a foreign agent of another country. We're going to go into that. Why is that? Why all these decades AIPAC where it's clearly for Israel first? There's been documentaries. There's an amazing damning documentary that could be seen where a Jewish reporter got into AIPAC and filmed and did stuff and actually he's got the goods on AIPAC. It's totally a front for a foreign nation to infiltrate the government leadership of the United States. And, what is the oath that everybody that is a senator or a congressman or woman or the president of the United States or serving in his cabinet for his pleasure, they all have to swear that oath to the Constitution, where they have to fight foreign and domestic uh, enemies if their enemies are trying to overthrow the democracy. And this is happening in a way I've never seen before in American history. It's even dangerous to say this because they're attacking. I mean, this is the fourth front of Netanyahu's war of Greater Israel. And he knows he's smart enough, a political animal, to know that the baby boomers like me were all dying out, and they're his last hold. The younger people of this country are not for what Israel is doing to its government, American government. The level of unpopularity, Israel is now the number one most hated country in the world for what it's doing. And America is just a few rungs above it. So it's not a good political space for either country to be in. And I think Trump, whatever way he does this, Trump is going to suffer a political disaster. But he's made a mistake. His whole life has led him to this mistake. And I would say that if he really is a patriot of this country, there's nothing wrong with any country having its interests. But when a country literally buys a government to see its interests fulfilled against the people of that government, that is treason. And it's treasonous what is going on. And Trump needs to, he's not going to, he's not going to get out of this. He thinks he can find a way to wheel and deal. He's got to go down that dark valley, the shadow, the valley of corruption that he has been so much involved with. Frankly, if he does it, I think he will, if he's honest with it and admits to his mistakes. I'm expecting something almost impossible for a pathologically narcissistic man like this man is. But maybe because he is always full of surprises, he might see that the only way out is to go through the path of contrition. I screwed up. I'm going to fix it now. And uh, put his foot down on Netanyahu and put his foot down on Israel and reclaim his supremacy as a president of the United States. And really, after a few years now, he's completely not been American first, to become America first, and for the sake of peace in Western Asia and the world. So it's in his court. I'd love to see him turn this around. I don't think he will. And I don't think this war is over at all. Even if they get through the negotiations and get to signing this thing, they still have to go through the House and Senate to ratify a treaty that House and Senate is bought and sold by AIPAC, Adelson, and Netanyahu. So it's not just our leader who's in a Hobson's choice. It's the United people of the United States as well that he represents. It's quite a mess. That's all. I'm done now.
Well, you know what? I've been doing a little bit of research here while you're talking because you brought up something that kind of clicked, you know, and I've been concerned, as you know, I've been concerned about Rosh Hashanah, right, of this year,
Oh, yes, me too.
right? And I've been stating that the world is emerging into a dangerous situation. I call it the world curse
Yeah.
because of this alignment of Rosh Hashanah on the Sabbath, not blowing the shofar.
Yeah.
Now, what is interesting is it also happens in 2027. It's rare when you have two consecutive years having it, but it has happened before. And so I'm just kind of like, you know, I'm using Grok, you know, just to figure out what years this has happened.
Well, 2023, we should start with that. But yeah, well, as it happened earlier,
Yeah, yeah,
it'd be
yeah.
interesting.
So let's. This is this is some of the numbers, some of the years that popped up. So this year and next year will be problematic. Now we can see just by extrapolating the news and the economy and AI and everything else
Yeah.
that this could cause some really negative externalities in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's go forward in time a little bit, just a little bit. The next time it happens uh, is it doesn't happen anytime soon. All right, so it's a rare event. This
What about in the next 211 years?
well, let's go back in time now. This is
Yeah.
where this kind of scared me a little bit. 1928, 1929.
Wow. Wow. That's the Great Depression,
Mm-hmm.
which was the accelerant for Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and Japan,
Yeah.
which all led to the Jewish Holocaust.
1999 and 2000.
That is an interesting time because that was the collapse of the Soviet Union. I think. Yes. No. That was actually the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the beginning of the new Russia under Putin. And that was also around, wasn't it around that time that Sharon made his speech for his first campaign speech to become prime minister on the Temple Mount near the Dome on the Rock? And did that not cause an explosion of an intifada that was long and
Yeah, you're hitting,
difficult?
you're hitting something here.
Yeah, I
Wait,
mean, he got on there, Ariel Sharon.
Sharon.
Yeah,
First of all, when did Sharon die? What was his first name? You remember?
Ariel.
Ariel. Oh.
Yeah, with an A.
This is like real time AI searching, stuff. All right, so he did his Temple Mount. Yeah, well, you have a good memory. It was September 28th, 2000.
My God. And September, it's right around the time.
Well, this is and like I've been saying, there is the
It's
soul
Rosh
roots.
Hashanah.
The soul roots between Jacob and Esau, and
Yeah,
the strength of Jacob is February, March, April, May, June,
yeah,
and then July, August. Wait, yeah. I'm sorry. It's 6 months and then 6 months. So it happens in a
right.
sinal, that's like a sine wave.
Hmm.
So Jacob, it's Jan, uh, February, March, April, May, June, July. Then Esau starts getting more power metaphysically.
Right.
So August, September, October. So September and October are really bad months for us. So that's because of Esau gained strength, and there's an attachment to Jacob. But all right, but what has happened here is September 28th, 2000. So you're right. So going back to another key
My God.
2 years is 2002 to 2003. What
Yes.
happened there?
Oh, that was some really bad mowing the lawn in Gaza. Some of the worst killings. So the setup, what we're seeing here in the longer term is the steps that set up to 7th October and the overreaction that happened on the 8th that has caused now the Semitic peoples of Palestine to now be in their Holocaust. But this could also, I've had talks about this with Rabbi Ariel Sharon, no, Rabbi Ariel Tzadok, sorry, another Ariel. And it's an interesting, people who watch um, the um, the things on aliens on I don't know what it's called. It's been on for ages, and it's about the searching for aliens and stuff
Oh,
like that. It's
ancient alien.
on Ancient Aliens. That's right. Well, he's a frequent guest interviewer, and over my career, I've often been asked when I do shows, um, in fact, he might be somebody you ought to have on the show. Then you could really go into this. It'd be very interesting to see what he had to say about it. In fact, I would suggest a show where he and I are on the show with you, and we talk about this whole issues that's come up about the shofar and all of that. And
Well,
will have a he's quite a amazing Kabbalist and Torah Jew, Torah Kabbalist, and
this is getting.
he's told me about how a lot of the other Kabbalists are been anticipating what is now happening, and he calls whenever he calls. Anyway, I try to get him on shows when they say, "Well, is there anyone you respect that you would have on the show that you feel is your stature?" I said, "Well, there's not many, but Ariel Zadok, absolutely, he's amazing." So And
Well,
they
let's
don't
set up
happen.
some, we should set up something because
Yeah, I'd love
I
to do
think
that.
that we're hitting on something here.
Yeah,
We've been touching it a little bit throughout
yeah,
these years of conversation,
yeah.
but there is this, I'm going to be poetic here.
Okay.
There is this time wave that it's long, but then there's also a time wave that's more frequent, has a higher
Mm.
frequency.
Yeah, fast frequency and a slow
Right.
frequency.
Right.
Yes,
And
yes.
at times they intersect.
Mm,
All right.
mm.
So here's another. Now I have to, reconfirm that the data that's being printed from Grok is true. But if it is, another key consecutive time that this happened was 1931 and 1932.
That's interesting.
This is getting like really scary.
1931, 1932. Well, again, that is the beginning of the Great Depression. And it's also you could probably check this out. I'll check it out on my side, but I think the Herzog movement of Zionism was beginning even before the Holocaust to really start to try to bring people into into Palestine. I think the whole concept of let us take this place was actually alive before the Holocaust really got people's collective attention to the Jewish people needing a homeland.
This is with the accord with the Rothschilds. Are you talking about?
Well, it might be, yes, but and but it would also be, yes, and it would also be. Well, that will come later when the British and there was the arrangement that was made in 1917 and 1918. It was fulfilled where the Turkish Empire, Ottoman Empire collapsed, and then France and Britain at the end of World War One. I think the something Picot. I remember the French man's name, but it was they redrew the map and they created Transjordan in Palestine was turned into and it was a British protectorate. Of course, it'd be interesting to see if there's some relationship to this of the people returning from the diaspora into Israel. Of course, it was huge return after World War II ended, um, but but I mean, the first thing that is there is again, it's the years. Oh, well, there's an obvious. There's an obvious. This is around the time Hitler came to power.
31 and 32.
Yeah, it was really where he
Did he
was.
get out of jail by then? When he was
Oh yes, that was in 1927. I think he was out
okay.
of Regensburg, and he had gotten back, and he was now being elected, and he was actually, I think in 32 the Nazis had a majority, and then they lost it in another election, and then he did the Reichstag fire, which is getting more from 33 to 34. And some interesting astrology was going on with that too, which we've
Well,
also passed through. We've repeated some of the transits of Uranus
yeah.
and Taurus and Aries
So
that triggered
32,
fascism last time.
32, like how this works is it opens up a gate, and that gate is for 1 year.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
when you have a double these consecutive times where shofar can't be blown,
Yeah.
then it increases the probability of something bad coming.
Yeah.
All right, because that door's open wider.
Hitler came to power.
Yeah. Okay, so 1940, for some reason, it doesn't happen in 1940s. It doesn't happen in 1950s. Now let's check 1960s. Now what we're looking for isn't when Rosh Hashanah happens on the Sabbath, the first
No.
day, right? We're looking for a consecutive 2 years.
But I wouldn't rule out the 1 year because remember, 2023, the shofar wasn't blown. and this whole
That's
explosion of
true.
genocide and everything
Well, if
began.
we do that, then
Yeah,
1942, 1945, and 1949.
my God, 42 was when the tide turned in the Pacific Theater. That was when the Japanese Empire was defeated in Battle of Midway, and they never recovered from that. Equally, at the time that was going on, the Sixth Army was going into Stalingrad
You,
and was trapped in Stalingrad with all the Axis forces that were on its flanks into a great military disaster that was the beginning of the end of the fascist German invasion of the
so,
Soviet Union.
so 1942 was Midway.
Yes, that was on June 6th or June 5th, I think, 1942. What happened was the Imperial Japanese fleet carriers, their main carriers, in one day, all four were sunk by
War,
the United States Navy. They never recovered from it. It was the tide turned. It took another several years for the war to end, but that was
so,
it. That was their chance.
so mid so Midway happened just before Rosh Hashanah happens, and guess what? In 42, Rosh Hashanah starts on September 11th.
Wow.
That's I'm gonna
Now,
tell you, there's something strange with this September 11th date. And I'm not just
well,
saying because of 9/11 and 2000, 2001, but this damn date keeps on popping up
well, it came
everywhere.
it came in a rare in Nostradamus's famous prophecy about that. It came up in a rare number anagram that he did because he said, on the seventh month. Let's see what it goes. In Anyway, he said in 1999, seventh month, the great king of terror will descend out of the skies, and it'll happen during the time of the resurrection of the great Mongol. Which, by the way, in 1999, the Red China rehabilitated Genghis Khan as a great figure of Chinese history. So he was literally resurrected, and it would resurrect the king of the Mongols, is what it says. So Mongolwa, and before and after Mars rules happily. Now, before and after is Mars is the god of initiating wars, but also new beginnings that come out of destruction, new eras. It was a new era for China because it was around that time that China really started becoming a superpower. And the thing though about 1999 seventh month is most people, and I made the mistake too in my writings. People who've read me can see I made it in the 90s where I said he's talking about July 1999, something important is going to happen, and it didn't happen. And so I wondered, okay, am I reading this wrong? And then I realized because this is what you must read French, 16th century French to really be able to be good at Nostradamus's prophecies. I looked and I went, oh, sept mois, sept mois. What? Then I studied calendars and I realized that septembre, is meaning the seventh month, which is now the ninth month, was bumped by Rome changing the calendar, the Latin calendar, to give a Julia month that was for Julius Caesar and Augustus month, August, for Octavian Caesar, the two greatest Caesars of them all. And so that means the sept mois has now become the ninth month, but in Nostradamus's time, it was the seventh month. So it started me thinking, and this is where dyslexia really helps. I started to look at what is 1999. It is 1999. What if this is a reverse number anagram where the ones become nines and the nines become ones? 9111, September month. I think I broke the code of it. It was not about July, it was about September 11th. And it's kind of interesting because in my life, as a prophecy scholar and a seer in my own right, I had kind of my big Henry II Nostradamus moment when I taped a show for Fox Networks called Prophecies of the Millennium. I think sometimes you can find it if you look on YouTube. It gets banned a lot of times, but it shows up again. It's a 2 hour special. It is in it. And I taped it in November of 1995, and it was released across the United States and Canada in March of 1996. And it became repeated a lot through the next 6 years or so. And basically, I was you'll see me talking about. They ask, is the two towers that were attacked in 1993, are they going down in the future? And I said, absolutely, they're going down completely. And because I had been looking at this possibility since 1983. I wrote a whole book about, and with all the documentation of the things, how my interpretation evolved. Because if you're onto something, your interpretation gets clearer as the time gets closer. It's classic right out of Philip K. Dick's The Minority Report. It really works that way. It's not science fiction or prophecy science fiction. It's how it works. If you're onto something, it becomes clearer. And so what happened then, I pulled all these things, 21 or so things that I said in my book, Nostradamus, The Complete Prophecies, which I published in 1997, but wrote in 1995, 1996. And it's the longest full-bodied attempt to do the complete prophecies of Nostradamus. It's 1,000 pages by Elmet Books. And it's what happened was that I was shocked to see what I had written, and I had written things that were pointing, long story short, to some terrorist attack, not a nuclear attack, but a terrorist attack on the two towers, that they would go down and it would happen sometime around 2001. And I had a meeting with my colleague um, Hans Holzer when I was doing a book tour. I think it was in 1994, and he had me over for dinner in Riverside, and we had a long talk about this. And of course, Hans Holzer is one of the great pioneers of parapsychology, and he had been testing the accuracy of many mediums, like Sybil Leek and some really powerful mediums in prophetic history. And he was saying, well, all my mediums are saying since the first attempt in 93 happened, that they're afraid that some nuclear explosion is going to hit New York and the two towers. And I kind of got in, my voice changed, and I watched myself say, so he's asking me, should we leave New York? And I said, no, don't leave New York, but don't go near to the Battery District. That's where the two towers are. It is doomed. That came out of my mouth. And it's a weird world with prophecy. Suddenly something comes out and you go, oh, what's that? So and I remember when I was being taken around to cabs to different lectures and book signings, that when I flew in from New York, all I could see 100 miles away were those two fingers, those two towers at the end of a huge mountain range of hollow mountains, as Nostradamus called them. And I was fixated on those two towers, and I always felt dread when I'd land in Kennedy Airport. And of course, there's a fantastic portrait of the skyline where you see all the famous towers of Manhattan, and these two big towers at the end of it that looked almost obscenely higher than the rest of them. And then when I look down streets I was walking on, see the towers, I get this feeling of dread.
It's interesting you bring this up. There's a video out there that was done a long time ago, before the towers fell. It's an individual as a polyglot that could learn languages really quickly,
Mhm.
but also I think when he was younger, he had a concussion and he
Yeah.
had disability. All right. He also can calculate numbers, and he visualizes events through numbers. All right. But he can also pick up language. So they tested him. He picked up like Icelandic language within 3 days or 4 days.
Now, was he young or was he there's a guy that's famous who had a brain injury and he became one of the most famous psychics of the 50s and 60s.
No, 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 no. This is
Okay.
this
His
a little
name is
more.
on the tip of my tongue.
All right, I don't remember his name,
Okay.
but during the video, this is probably being recorded in 1990s.
Okay.
They took him to New York to do this experiment or this test or something. And he kept on saying that he didn't feel right being in New York, and he kept on seeing nine. He kept on seeing nine. All right. So this is where it's getting really spooky.
Well, I'll tell you something. In this book I had done, and anybody, if you go to Amazon, it's called Nostradamus Premonitions of 911. It's available as a ebook as well as a print book at Amazon. And it's one of my most important books because it tells not only my story arc through all this, but I start with looking at the famous documented experiences of mass visions of something coming from various people. I started with the Titanic, and then I ended with the very important visions of Carl Gustav Jung, where he thought he was having a psychotic break, but what he really was seeing in the metaphors of prophecy. This was in 1913, hint, hint. He was seeing some terrible flood of blood that it wouldn't hit Switzerland where he was, but it would flood over all of Europe. Quite a ghastly vision, and it would keep coming. And he was thinking he was losing it. But as my own experience of having the same premonitions, a really powerful one happening when I got back from India and moved to where I live now, outside of cities. I was like told by spirit, it's time for you not to be an urbanite anymore. Live where there's more nature around you. Something big is about to happen. This was March 2001, and it just got more and more powerful. So I moved everything up to where I live now, and outside of Seattle, on an island. And it got to a peak where I thought I was going to die. It was getting so overwhelming by September 10th that I didn't know what was going on. And the whole story is there. And of course, what happened is I finally went to bed and had a few hours fitful sleep. And then I'm hearing my Australian agent and his Australian drawl in my dream going, he's saying my Sanskrit name. I'm a disciple of Osho. So he's saying, Arjuna, Arjuna, wake up, mate. It's happening. It's happening what you've been saying for 20 years. And on the third one, I woke up. He was yelling down the phone from London. And I pick up the phone and he's saying, it's happened. The terrorists have taken down the towers just like you said they would. And not just me, other people have also said it. And so I put down the phone, turned on the television, and I saw live the second jet hit the South Tower. And then in the next hour, I had my Philip K. Dick precog resolution. I saw things happening in real present time that was then, I contend, foreseen by Nostradamus 4.7 centuries ago, that I couldn't figure out. Like, why is he talking about the hollow mountains? They will be plunged into a boiling cauldron. Now, the people that do Nostradamus seem to, because they don't do the French, they don't understand that these are poems. In fact, Nostradamus was a rhymer, but it's too hard to do. I only did the rhymes and English translations for the biography, and I'm the first person to write a full biography on Nostradamus, which I think is very strange because I don't know why nobody did it before me in 2003. Another good book to read. It's called Nostradamus: A Life and Myth. You can also find it in Amazon if you just type in John Hogue, and you'll find these books. But so you can see what it looks like in English as a poem. So you have to be a poet. Also, I'm a poet as well. You have to have the metaphoric idea that then don't take things literally all the time. So what is boiling? What looks like something being plunged into a boiling cauldron? Well, didn't we all see that on September 11th when one after the other the towers were literally pushed down and they created this boiling miasma, boiling like a boiling cauldron and of all this debris fields and asbestos and stuff that been vomited out into the Hudson River. And so I'm saying he's trying in the 16th century to describe stuff that must seem very alien and strange to him. These hollow mountains towering above the tallest cathedrals of that time. That he was, and so I'm going, oh my God, it's a poem, it's a metaphor, poetic. It's these are the boiling cauldrons. Then why did he say that they'd be pushed into a tub? Because that's the other meaning for cauldron, cuvée. It was more cauldron in the 1600s or 16th century, but it also means tub. So I researched the construction of the Twin Towers, and I found out that the 8-story deep watertight compartment, which was going to connect with the subway system, so they wanted to make sure the Hudson River could never flood the entire subway system. They build it so that even if the buildings went down, it wouldn't break this protected watertight thing that they called affectionately the tub. There's so many other things I could say, but I really hope a lot of you will read this book. But this short book will reveal more about me and my life and what I've been doing than most of the other books that I write. And so the thing to finish on this a bit is that um, there's one positive thing. All the things that he foresaw in the first 3 lines happened, but the most terrifying thing did not happen in the fourth line. He basically, long story short, was describing the tub breaking and vomiting all this sulfuric, poisonous debris in a flood throughout the subway system. The 911 could have killed 50,000 people. It only fortunately killed under 3,000 Americans. It could have been much worse. And so that made me, because in that final line is the real key, a very unusual statement. He said, um, they will want verification. Well, this threat come. They will want verification from the Normans. Now, there's a thing in Nostradamian grammar that was very popular in the 16th century, and this is a Greek term called synecdoche. And it's where you say, if I'm going to talk about, if I say Paris, I mean France. If I say Normans, I mean France. The smaller is hinting at the larger. And so, well, it so happens, Le Figaro documented that on September 10th, there was a lot of wild traffic on internet and phones that they called up the Pentagon, said, we think Al Qaeda is up to something. We're getting all this stuff going on, and they're either going to attack the U.S. Embassy in a terrorist attack, or they're going to hit something in domestic America. Now, the guys took that in, they went back home and went back to work the following morning trying to figure out what the French intelligence was saying to their opposites in the United States. And then the western facade of the Pentagon was hit by one of the 4 jets. He's literally saying this thing will happen when they want verification from the French. That happened. So so anyway, just to finish this little detour here is that I did that show. I talked a lot about that. They did a special effect of the battery area being destroyed. And then they would do these things when they come back to that theme. They'd show the 2 towers and they would flash out. And then it got rerun, and then it was broadcast. I found out later it was broadcast by FX channel across America and Canada on the Fox network, cable network, a week or 2 before 911 actually happened. And rather than speak to me again, the suits at Fox Network, when they realized I had made these predictions, it had been documented and in books as well as on television. What was their response? the response that happened to Nostradamus when his very well-known prophecy about Henry II dying in a jousting accident, mortally wounded, which would cause civil wars in France. He didn't want these things to happen. He risked his life warning people so that it wouldn't happen, that people would go, "Oh, we got to watch out. We got to grab the king and say, chill out, man. This is you got to retire from jousting. You're 45 years of such. You're in your 40s. Your kids are way underage to take over if you die, and that would be a catastrophe because we've got this religious tension between Protestant French Huguenots and Catholics going on here. I don't think you should do jousting anymore for the sake of your realm and your son's futures as heirs." And but he comes out of the meeting with Nostradamus that Catherine de Medici, the Queen of France, had, because she was one of the first people to read Nostradamus. She used to get the books, that any book on the occult or spooky stuff, she told the Office of Copyrights to send it to her first so she could read it. So it's a damn good chance that she literally was the first person outside of Nostradamus to have read his prophecies. And she immediately got her husband to get him up to talk about this. And we don't know what was said in the audience, but we do know that Nostradamus, and I can kind of consider it possible that Nostradamus talked to him about two destinies that he had. He could die in a jousting accident, or if he didn't joust anymore, he might become this Chironselan person that is a great kind of second Charlemagne that would conquer Italy and absorb it into France. Well, that was X'd out by him. And he wrote about this eclipse and wrote pamphlets about it that even said more about it. And this is stuff that I have discovered that hasn't been translated in English. He wrote a lot about it. And he was trying to stop it from happening. I was trying to stop 911 from happening. But what happened to him happened to me. Not, fortunately, not as potentially violent as what happened to him. See, the 10 days after the jousting accident, when Henry died in agony from this splinter of a jousting stick that went through his, in between his eye and eye socket, and went deep into his brain, and then it got infected and died a horrible death, as he said he would, Nostradamus. Gabriel de Lorge, who was the knight who didn't lower his jousting stick fast enough, had made the mistake, and it bounced off the king's cuirass, and it went right through the gilded cage of his helmet, which he says his eyes will be pierced through a golden cage, the golden cage of his visor, and then he'll die a cruel death. And so this man, it was by accident who did it, but he was also a Protestant. I guess he was kind of protecting himself because of the same kind of feeling that, oh, you wanted to kill him. He yelled out when he heard the news the king had died, "Cursed be the one who predicted so evilly and so well." So the thing is, so then later that night, there was a mob that left Paris to the suburbs to a chateau, which is the offices of the Roman Inquisition in their embassy in Paris. And they demonstrated in their thousands before the church justices, and they burnt effigies of Nostradamus, demanding that they burn him alive for predicting this prophecy. So here's the thing. We haven't changed much in 4.7 centuries. There is this idea that people who predict evil things coming are somehow wanting them to come. That is not true. But we're paid for it. Those of us who have that gift, we're paid for it. They suddenly, well, you made it happen. No, I was trying to stop it from happening. And so all these people, from the Lorgia to the mobs, thought that Nostradamus made that prediction as some kind of evil spell to make it happen. And it was not the fault of the king, and not the fault of him choosing to be more a jock than a royal, and ruining his country for the next 40 years of civil wars, which Nostradamus very accurately foresaw. And so here I am telling the people at Fox that we had done this show and I had made these predictions as they must have seen it. They saw what I had said 6 years earlier, 5 or 6 years earlier, and their response was blacklist him. He's never to appear on any Fox network show, not on Sean Hannity like he did once before, and he's not to be ever allowed into anything we broadcast because I imagine that they got people calling from the White House and from Langley saying, "What is about this guy and this prophecy? What was that all about?" Was shown across the United States like 2 weeks before it happened.
Right.
So this was my Nostradamus Henry II jousting prophecy moment.
So,
Which
so for the ones that are listening right now that are just joined, I just want to reiterate that there are these times where Rosh Hashanah coincides with the Sabbath and you can't blow the shofar, and that prevents the Jews when they blow the shofar by not being able to blow the shofar. It allows for Satan or Satan to to continue on his trajectory. Normal Rosh Hashanah, you blow the shofar and it silences him so you can get a blessing. So these years that it happens, there's a potential curse on a community, on an individual,
on the world.
country, or the whole world.
And
Now,
remember, Satan also has the role in Judaism as a prosecutor of
right,
sins.
right, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And that's the reason why you're blowing the shofar to silence the prosecutor so you
exactly.
have a
You
better,
have more luck than
yeah,
have to confront your sins.
right. Okay, now there are times where Rosh Hashanah coincides with the Sabbath, and there are rare times where this happens consecutively.
Yeah.
And it seems that when it happens consecutively, there is an amplification of the curse.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's another. So 1960s didn't have a consecutive Rosh Hashanah. All right. But the times that it happened on the Sabbath was 1962. All right.
Okay.
And you have to remember that's September of 1962 that carries on until October, roughly, of 1963.
Right.
Well, 1963 wasn't so great for JFK.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's very significant because the whole world's direction changed
Right,
when
right,
that happened.
right, right. So for the ones that are listening here, the curse is lasting for the year
Yeah.
during the Jewish calendar.
Right.
All right, 1969, it also happened.
That's very interesting. The eve of Yom Kippur War, during the War of Attrition, when Israelis were on the Suez Canal with their fortresses, and there was fighting for years in this kind of frozen conflict that then climaxed in the most potentially successful attempt of Arab armies to overthrow the Israeli state in October of 1972.
Okay, now the rear event where it's consecutive. 1975 and 1976.
I wonder, was that around the time?
That would have been full. Wouldn't it
Who
be?
was who was the prime minister? I think Golda Meir might have still been prime minister.
See,
She was there.
I was thinking something to do with Ford, and then Ford loses to Carter.
Well, that
Carter.
that that could be well. Oh well, then you've got the things that set in motion. The reason why South Asia and Iran has been in the minds of people in the West who can never forgive the Iranians for storming the embassy, which you know,
You're getting there now. This is the point that I'm making with
you know,
when it coincides when there's a consecutive coinciding with Rosh Hashanah on the Sabbath, 2 consecutive years, that curse, the aperture of the curse is wider and it can be amplified. All right. Now, when it's just on just a year that's landing on the Sabbath in 1970s, 1972, and 1979. See the point that I'm making here? Is that there's
You know what happened in 79?
well, yeah, that
The Iranian
yes, exactly. This
Revolution,
is right,
which was
exactly
secular and then went religious when Ayatollah Khomeini came
seven
from France. By the way, Nostradamus wrote about that one too, of how he come from France and the Shah. He talked the Shah of Persia, the king of Persia shall fall, and that's one of his most amazing prophecies as well. So yeah, the Iranian Revolution happened.
72. It
Yom
opens up
Kippur,
what
or
but it also carries on until 1973. This is Watergate.
Watergate.
All right.
Yep.
Now,
Which was unfortunate, whether one likes or doesn't like Nixon. A lot of things that Nixon was doing because of Watergate, because he could not complete his second term to 1976, led to major civil wars in Angola and some other things too that kind of destabilized things. It ended détente and started the United States and the Soviet Union starting to rebuild nuclear weapons, and actually that led in the 80s, and maybe we'll find something in the 80s during Reagan, but it led to the crisis we're repeating now because of Trump in his first term, erasing the Intermediate Missile Treaty, as well as erasing the JCPOA, which kept Iran was the one thing that was working. But I got to add, Obama never got the Congress to ratify it, which comes back to that roadblock that Trump might face, even if he gets a spine and puts his foot down. And if it gets to the Senate to be ratified, this is where Netanyahu's people have very cleverly got themselves so deep into the corruption, corrupting the Senate. Of course, to be fair, the senators were corruptible, so it's not like they're
right,
victims, they're part of the problem.
right.
So these things, these repeated karmic issues, these karmic echoes keep coming back.
It's this long time wave that has a tendency to intersect a higher frequency wave.
Yeah.
And so so in the 1970s you had a consecutive Rosh Hashanah on the Sabbath, 1975, 1976. All right. That's opening up something that gets a little bit more push in 1979. Now, what's
Yes,
interesting
because
is
that's the election of Ford, and who was kind of a caretaker president, I think. Or was that Carter? Was Carter elected in 76?
76, I thought.
Yes, because Ford just did not get elected as his himself.
Right,
He was the caretaker
right,
president. That's right. It was Carter. Yes, it was
right,
76. Well,
right.
yes, a whole lot of things went south with Carter
Exactly. And then 79.
in the Middle East.
And it was 79, it happens again. And then
Yeah.
we have the Iran issue. Now, what is interesting is there's no consecutive Rosh Hashanah with the Sabbath in 1980s, but it does happen on the Shabbos in 82, 86, and 89.
Well, 82 was the invasion of Lebanon, which the Americans pulled Ariel Sharon's forces back, where those terrible massacres were allowed in Beirut because they were having a civil war, a long and lingering civil war. That period and those situations, for better or worse, created Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is defeating the IDF right now soundly, as the IDF seems only capable of destroying entire towns full of innocent civilians in Lebanon. which is not making things feelings
So
like
wait, the Beirut bombing was in 82 or 81? 82, wasn't it?
it was in, I think it was the Marine bombing and the French bombing, which killed 69 people after the bombing that hit, I think it was 82, yes.
Okay, so and there was 1986 and
Wow.
then 1989, and wasn't the fall of the Berlin Wall in 89?
Well, it was the end of the Cold War. The Cold
Okay.
War
See,
officially ended
see,
in
see,
December 1989, and a lot of people mistake 1991 or two. That was the afterbirth of it. The official declaration of the end of the Cold War. It's funny how historians and people miss this. Is when Premier Gorbachev of the Soviet Union and George W. Bush Sr., H.W. Bush Sr., got on this big yacht-like boat surrounded by a U.S. and Soviet Navy in the Mediterranean, and they officially signed and declared the end of the Cold War, which had been raging since 1948 with the Berlin airlift.
okay, so we have the fall of we have the end of the Cold War, and then all of a sudden the next consecutive pattern is 1999 to 2000, which carries into 2001, and this opens up the whole 9/11.
But were there any issues in the 1990s
Uh,
with
there
the
was
shofar?
also 96.
Was it a single one or do
Yeah,
a
no,
double?
no, it was a single. So there
Okay.
was a single one in 96, and then a consecutive one in 99, 2000.
Wow. Okay, 96. Let's see. I'm
90,
trying to think where what it might have happened.
96 would have been
Well, it would have been,
re-election. Wasn't that the re-election for Clinton?
yeah, that would be Clinton's second term, but it would also 96, 97
When did the blue
would
dress?
be the heat up of the that years and years where they were flying U.S. and planes over Iraq to, that what
Oh, the
was that?
no-fly zone.
The no-fly zone war, which lasted for the bulk of the 90s. And that's when Clinton started to do that kind of set the stage for him starting little wars with Iraq to distract people from his sexual affairs
Okay, so
out of
2000,
wedlock.
so the 2000s, it happened in the consecutive pattern was 2002, 2003, and that was it. And then obviously the one that we talked about in 2000. So there was a
Wow, yeah, I mean that's wow. So what about the 2010s?
2010s. No consecutive pattern in 2010, but
No, in the decade of the teens, the 20 teens.
20, yeah, that decade of the 2010s, there was no consecutive pattern that fell on Shabbos. But that's really interesting. 2010s didn't have anything happen that fell on Shabbos.
Okay.
See what I mean? It's clustered.
Right.
The patterns. These things aren't. There's a clustering, and then all of a sudden, it goes kind of
Well, it's
dormant,
following the lunar
quiet, and
calendar,
all of a
it's
sudden,
following the
yeah, and
lunar
then all of a
calendar, it would do that. So there was no single.
no, that fell on Shabbos. No, that started
Wow,
on Shabbos.
and no doubles.
There
So
were a lot of like Thursday starts on a Thursday, a Monday.
yeah, but that doesn't fit.
No,
Yeah, because
no.
of the
Because
sundown
we're looking
nature
at
of
it
the Jewish
starts on
calendar.
Shabbos,
Yeah,
and the other pattern is a consecutive
right.
pattern. All right, and then
So
21.
what about the 2020s?
Now the 2020s,
Before the stuff that we got into around 2023.
2020, 2020 was an isolated event. 2023 was an isolated event. then the consecutive pattern of 2026 and 2027. So something is happening, and we know what happened in
Well, I
20.
can tell you.
I'm telling you that COVID, Afghanistan,
Yeah.
the fall of the Berlin Wall,
And
the,
2020 and
it's all
2020 was
connected.
2020, and Americans don't understand this, but the Iranians is burned into their memory. The 2020s was the year 2020, 3 days into it. Um, the Eisenhower, the General Patton of Iran, Qasem Soleimani, of the leader of the Al-Quds, a very beloved, like Eisenhower, who
And you're
defeated
getting
ISIS with an Iranian general, Iraqi general called Mohandas. Um, the two of them, in the wee hours of January 3rd, 2020, were flown in. Well, he flew in from Tehran into Baghdad because the prime minister, an acting prime minister, that is, of Iraq, who was a U.S. picked guy, said that he got a communique from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Long story short, Riyadh was open to talks to bring détente between Iran and Saudi Arabia and end the danger of the whole Gulf War going up in flames. So Soleimani was chosen to go speak to him. So he was met by Mohandas at the Baghdad International Airport. They got into the same car, and the motorcade shortly after leaving the hotel for him to sleep for a few hours before we speak with the prime minister. The United States launched a drone attack, killing him, Mohandas, and five other people outside the Baghdad airport. And and the United States had called up the prime minister after because he informed them that this was happening. He was just being dutiful and informing, oh, this might be good, this looks like we might get peace or something. So he dutifully reported to the United States. And then an hour later, probably the CIA called back and said, well, thank you for telling us that. We're going to kill them. We're going to assassinate them. And he says, you can't do that. You can't do that with prime ministers. I've invited them here. You've used me as bait. And there's a peace thing that could happen. And what the Americans were trying to tell him is, we don't want peace between the Saudis and the Iranians. It's bad for our domination. So this thing they did was to put him in his place. But they didn't understand because these people don't understand the Middle East. They don't study it. Even in Langley, Virginia, they don't. I'm sure they have analysts that know what things are what in the Middle East that are not being listened to you. And I know some of you are watching know just who you are and how your accurate intel has been ignored by the kind of people that surround presidents, especially. And it's this president in his first term, towards the end of his first term, that listened gullibly to all this stuff about Soleimani being this bad, evil man who was about to launch some terrorist event on the Baghdad, this or that, and that was all BS. And frankly, I've even had people say, "Well, he killed a whole lot of Americans." Back during when we were occupied, when we invaded Iraq without being invited. We I have to say this because it's very important. And what I would say to anybody who says that now is, yeah, he killed a lot of Americans. Didn't we kill a lot of redcoats at the beginning of the American Revolution that came in ships and occupied our area without being asked? We were the invaders of Iraq. People of Iraq did not ask us to come in and kill 1 million of them in the crossfire of the next 8 years of war and turmoil and civil war that we started in Iraq, and then left the ruined cities of Ramallah and others so polluted with our uh, depleted uranium bullets and shells that the radioactive mutanting of babies and things that was even worse than Hiroshima, who we also blew up with a bomb. an atomic bomb. We're the only people who've used this. Maybe we're weeks or hours away from that changing. We might not be alone, or we'll repeat it again. So yeah, Soleimani, but I had to say, you dumb people in Langley, you don't understand that you just murdered what is equivalent to murdering Eisenhower and Patton of the Shia Muslims. The people who, not you people, you profited from ISIS and Al Qaeda. These people defeated them. Maybe that was the revenge you're taking because he took away your tools of terror. And um, so the Iranians said to Trump, said, "We're going to bury our dead first, but we will respond. We're going to demonstrate to you something. We're not going to attack and kill any of your troops, but we're going to make a demonstration of who you're dealing with, who you don't seem to know what kind of people you're dealing with." And so what then happened for the next few days was, first in Baghdad, tens of millions of Iraqis marched in the streets of Baghdad with the coffins of Soleimani and Mohandas and the people that were in their entourage. A sea of black, millions of people. And then it started in Tehran and Isfahan and other cities. 15 million people in the streets of Tehran. You could see them literally going off to the horizon. I have pictures of it in the Hogue Prophecy reports. We awakened a sleeping giant and that was the beginning of really the resistance to basically Zionist influenced actions. And now that's coming home to roost.
It does.
So 2020 is least known, but it is incredibly the Arabs, the Arabia and Iran were, and they did for a while have détente, and then we destroyed it because we don't. Our leaders and you led are then your fate is with them, whether you agree with them or not. Is we want the world at war because it's good business. And God knows now the what's happened in Ukraine and what's happening also in South Asia is showing how your military industrial complex is purely in for the money. They're not patriots for the United States. They're purely into the profits, and they love to make profits to the point that even you want to know why 12 F-35s got blown up the other day in the hangars in Jordan? Because they were probably couldn't fly because they're like most F-35s, three-quarters of them are usually in the mechanic shop getting overhauled because they're crap. They're multi-billion dollar pieces of junk. And there's only a quarter of them that are ever actually active, can actually fly. So these are a bunch of busted, ruptured ducks in a row of hangars that were just waiting to get blown up by 11 hypersonic Iranian advanced missiles. So this is what was those missiles in 2020. What happened was once they buried their dead, the Iranians announced to Trump and his war room, we have launched cruise missiles, about 25 of them, and we're going to hit Al Assad Air Base. Go make a message to everybody, all the American soldiers there, get in your bunkers, get get into safety. We don't want to harm any of you, but we are going to give you a demonstration of what we can do. And what they did is, after a few concussions, they were pounded by these missiles all night. And then the next morning, they found out what they could do. They had their cruise missiles back then were far better than our Tomahawks, which constantly give out. You know, when a whole bunch of Tomahawks, 62 of them were launched by Trump in April of 2017 to hit an airbase in Syria, about 30 of them fell out of the sky because they have this problem because they're not really that good. They're old and they're not they break down just like the F-35. Why is that important in a money situation? If you're this greedy bugger who wants to make hand over fist all kinds of money in the war business, one thing you can never have is peace. The other thing is, if you want to keep making money for these wonder weapons that you create, you make sure they have a planned obsolescence so that you keep making money on them being repaired. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what the little ring of multi-billionaires that ring Washington, who are the people who run the military industrial complex of the United States, are doing. And now that karma from 2020 is coming home to roost on you, the United States. You are running out. You have expelled all these missiles into Ukraine and all these tanks and all these guns, and they're now rusting on the fields of battlefields that Ukraine lost fighting the Russians, who have a military industrial complex which is purpose based. It's not profit based. They want things that work and they not and don't go into the shop and have to be repaired. Their moral compass is alive. Our moral compass in our military industrial complex is dead. And so we are Death Eaters. And our ways to war are bringing us to a point where death eating could take the whole civilization if this continues. We are in the most dangerous times, and these numbers and the importance of 2020 in the shofar Rosh Hashanah situation is definitely in play. And 2023, of course, is when the Palestinian Holocaust started. It's when more Jews were killed by the Hannibal Directive on the 7th of October by Israeli forces invoking the Hannibal Directive, where hundreds, I watched the films of the helicopters of the Israelis strafing and missiling all those people that were in the rave concert. And it's ironic. You see all these people. I clearly had seen footage of them. They're all in their dancing outfits and all running for their lives from this helicopter that's running up against them. And I am even seeing a few Palestinian heavily armed people running with them. They're all trying to run away from it. And I watched them. You can see these links. They're still out there, folks. The Israeli armed forces killed of the 1,200 Israelis that were murdered, two-thirds of them were murdered by their own people. And there's a lot of indications that show us that Netanyahu knew for a long time this thing was going to happen, and he needed this false flag to declare Amalek to be the prophet Samuel calling the Amalek, which would be all the Palestinians targeted for death and expulsion, but more death. And that death is going on. They killed all the journalists that were Palestinian, 600 of them. They killed them all. So that's to blind you to not see what's going on now. And nobody can get in and see. And the starvation is going on. They are killing those people with starvation, with murder. It's a Holocaust, folks. And I cannot imagine my Jewish blood in my many bloods is just cannot fathom that Jews would become Nazis, killing Semite Arabs. And these same Jews would say they're not even Semites, which you know is a lie if you've read your scriptures.
And what's concerning me, John, is that mankind has done some really bad things in 2020, as you mentioned, and other things too.
Yeah, the plague, we have to
Right, right.
specify too, that was there. That was terrible. You know that 10 million people died from that, from the cure?
More than that, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the and still are dying.
Right. Well, there's going to be a lot of pathologies that emerge that are related, where people have
Turbo
suffered
cancer.
earlier. Right. Now,
Yeah.
so we have the 2020 window of Rosh Hashanah on the Sabbath, and then we had 2023. We know about October 7th and that what that ushered in,
Mhm.
and everything that we have done as mankind is getting amplified in 2026
Yeah.
on September 11th,
Yeah.
when Rosh Hashanah coincides with the Sabbath, the
Yeah.
shofar can't be blown,
Yeah.
and the same thing happens the next year, and that's October 1st.
Yeah.
All right. So, there's this amplification. And I'll tell you, when I saw 2020, when I saw 1928 and 1929
Yeah.
as a consecutive pattern, I would not be surprised that we're talking war and we're talking economic calamity.
It's happening. We have this,
I think
they're doing,
we're just starting to see it boil.
you wait
Over.
till September.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There'll be no question when things go skyrocketing in the oil prices and this whole thing that Trump's gotten into to kind of drag this thing on and not resolve it because and he can't help it because he's losing his mind, and that's very dangerous. Um,
Well,
uh,
we have munitions that have been expended. We don't have
yeah,
the military industrial complex to be able to
it'll take 10
resupply,
years. It'll
right?
take 10 years to
Resupply.
replenish that.
Then you have this up and coming power, China with
Yeah,
Taiwan, right? You have Israel that's going to try to deep six any type of peace agreement,
that's right.
right? Then you have the midterm elections and this infighting that's happening in our
Yeah.
society between the conservatives and
Potential civil war, a cold civil war right now.
yeah,
It could go
yeah,
hot.
yeah, yeah.
And
No,
then talk about this. Um, the the facts that Larry Johnson and Pepe Escobar accurately from Pakistani source have found is that Iran has nuclear weapons, and if this thing doesn't work out, they have already promised that they will test one. And the long story short about nuclear testing is it's almost impossible for a earthquake to happen exactly at the same time that you create a man-made nuclear earthquake underground. So the way it works is the Iranians, where they're ready to do it, will announce to all combatants in the world that on this moment, on this second, on this hour in Iranian time, we will light one off, and all your seismic instruments across Central Asia will pick it up exactly on this time and second. And so, then you get a nuclear size seismic activity. And I think because a lot of people keep talking about three bombs, I mean, Ted Postal made it very clear. He's a ballistics professor at MIT, a really good source of mine. And he made it clear that Iran has enough fissile material to make 11 Hiroshima-sized bombs. So that's almost like what North Korea had when, in the end of the 1990s, they started saying, "Okay, on this hour, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that," and they did 3 tests. So there would still be enough bombs. So the whole idea of the Samson option happening is also in play. Where Israel, if it can't get what it wants, and a greater Israel, it'll, like Hitler said, if I can't win, I'll take the whole world down with me. Now I kind of believe I'm saying this. I'm seeing Jewish leaders and Jewish people kind of ready in Israel to do exactly the same thing. How does that happen? It tells me that the enemy that is your enemy that you hate and are afraid of, you can become that enemy if you don't find a more aware and loving, compassionate way to assess how your part in getting into this mess. We always throw it on the person abusing us, but hey, I'm somebody who lost $500,000 from an embezzling publisher. My first book, my major bestseller, I didn't get hardly any money from it because he embezzled the money. And I was so angry about that, murderously angry. And then I had to get tired from being so that, and I had to kind of sit back and say, hey, you know, Mr. Hogue, look in the mirror. It takes two. I took my power back by saying, well, what about you? What did you do? How did you walk into like some hippy dippy idiot and let this guy take you for everything? I mean, thank goodness he got my foot through the door. But you know, I've never had money since then. I would have had a nest egg of $500,000 if I had invested and sat on it. It might have been $1 million now or more. Um, but when I started to own my own part in a thing, as the Israelis must do, as the Americans must do, then you've empowered yourself to get out of the trap. And you've be my master Osho used to say, we are as individuals 100% responsible for everything that happens to us, good, bad, or indifferent. And all that means is that's empowerment. That means if you have tragedy or if you're robbed or if, like I was, like most people have not been robbed that amount of money individually, you you either can eat yourself up with hate or you can grow up and become wiser from the experience. And that's the alchemy that needs to happen in the world with all these things that are happening. And yes, I mean, I have already written in the Hogue Prophecy Bulletin that these next 2 years, 2026, 2027, and 2028, also are the climax to this current conflict, this World War III that began on the 2022 February, starting with the first campaign being the Russians coming to save Ukrainian-speaking Russians from the Nazis that overtook Ukraine, who were massacring them. And they preempted a NATO-trained 160,000 man army of Ukrainians that were trained by NATO, had a lot of mercenaries, Americans, you name it, Colombians, Poles, by the battalions, all sheep dipped in Ukrainian uniforms that in February were gearing up to do an ethnic cleansing of the Donbass region. And this is the same region that we're literally months away from Russia taking back the whole Donbass region. And so the war is reaching a climax. Konstantinovka fell today. It's now all left is the mopping up. This is a significant breakdown of the fortress cities. The last part of the line the Ukrainians are holding in Russian-speaking Donbass, in Donetsk, which for 300 years until Lenin moved them into Ukraine were Russian provinces, never part of Ukraine. There's karma for you. Now, forced, they didn't want to leave Ukraine. They wanted to have more autonomy, but still stay in Ukraine. But then the Ukrainian fascists with their swastika flags and their Azov battalions and stuff started massacring them. And so they fought back. And the Russians helped them, and then finally the Russians had to be pulled into the conflict. So in this summer, it's probably going to see those major cities. They're the last bastion of Ukrainian nationalist control of the Russian-speaking provinces that chose to leave Ukraine because of the harm and the massacres and the violence and the lack of love, or just, oh, you're sub-Slavs. We'll just clean you out and we'll take all your mines and all your industries for ourselves. You know, what was Hitler doing when he went into Ukraine? He was trying to take all the industries and stuff and the crops and all. He didn't care about the people that were there. And I just remind Ukrainians that 7 million of the 27 million Soviet citizens that died were Ukrainians fighting Hitler when he invaded Ukraine and the Soviet Union. And I see now that a lot of the memorials about the war, they've kind of shifted attention to the Great Patriotic War, because then they'd have to admit that they were fighting with the Russians and make their museums look more at the Ukrainians that fought with the Germans, who were also National Socialists. It's shocking. I'm part Ukrainian myself, so it shocks me. And Ukrainian Jew and Russian. I'm also Russian heritage, so amongst the many other things. So anyway, there I am saying that. Now, and then just one final thing. We are now seeing a debate happening in Russia. I saw a very good interview where they had Sergei Karaganov, who is a very interesting Russian advisor to premiers of the Soviet Union and the Russian presidents. And he was on with John Mearsheimer, and Glenn Deason was the host of the two of them. They had a very, very interesting conversation about the concept of, because Russians are getting mad. It's reaching a point where they're tired of this long special military operation. If you guys really knew what Putin was like, you would know that he's been trying to keep this thing not going into a full-scale war. But he's had a change of heart when Trump had him on the phone at the beginning of the year and said, "Oh, sit there for a while in Valdai, and I'll get back to you when I know more about the peace efforts that we're doing." And so he wasn't actually there. He was in the Kremlin, Putin, because they wondered what would happen. So they set up a test. And what happened was, in the 2 hours that he was supposed to wait there, hundreds of drones guided by United States satellites were out to kill him in that northern region near Novgorod, near St. Petersburg, in a winter forest. Now, next day, he called back, the president said, and told Trump what had happened. And Trump either feigned or really was authentically not aware that this had happened, that things were going on without his approval. I don't know which is true. I kind of lean to him knowing that it was there. That woke Putin up to ending his great efforts for decades to finish this problem diplomatically. Now he's emerged from that period of meditation as a war president. So things are going to get fast and furious. And one of the things that could very well happen, and this is also, I'm talking about this in regards to how the shofar issues we've been talking about are not just about Israel or that region of the Middle East, but they're also influencing other areas of this conflict coming to a head in the next 2 years. And from now to the next 2 years, is that a decision, a climax could very well come in. The Russians are getting tired of MI6 and the British being in country with the CIA and all those bio labs, which the Russians were first to expose because some of them were in eastern Ukraine, and there are many of them that the CIA had there. Long story short, this war has made Ukraine a proxy of NATO. You ask any Russian who they're fighting, they don't say Ukraine. They're saying through Ukrainians, NATO is gone to war with us. They've spent all these decades breaking their promise not to advance beyond the German borders to where they are now on our borders with NATO forces, just as similar to what Hitler did in 1941, June. And they know. And then this whole idea of, well, we want Ukraine to be part of NATO, that's a red line. Just like putting missiles on Cuba was a red line for the United States in the very same ways. If you're going to have thermonuclear weapons and ICBMs just 90 miles off our shore, that's a red line because you can wipe out Washington, D.C. before we can even know it and decapitate our country, just like what if Ukraine had those kind of missiles. It would take them 4.5 minutes rather than 5 to wipe out Moscow and decapitate the situation, which would be catastrophic for the world because the Russians have a dead hand switch, which means if you kill everybody in Moscow, the bombs there's a radio frequency that comes out that all the nuclear Russian things will hear, and they will launch everything on you and Europe. And you and America and Europe will not exist in 72 minutes. So that, and then what you've got a Ukrainian Nazi government that does things that are just things that I grew up with in the Cold War, the first one, and I can't imagine if anybody did what they did, like getting drones out and attacking one of the strategic wings, the strategic triad of Russia. They were attacking the bombers, the strategic bombers with drones, and they were blowing some of them up deep into Russia in three bases, two in Siberia. If you did that in the last Cold War, we would have had nuclear exchanges. That is one of the things. If you attack the submarines, if you attack the strategic ICBM launchers, if you attack the bombers, you would be in nuclear war. So it's amazing the Russians have. We should be thankful the Russians have such restraint, because unlike you and your leaders, who seem to have forgotten the dangers of thermonuclear war since the Cold War ended. And the Russians, you're alive because the Russians and the Chinese are adults and they know what's at stake. The human race, the planet. All you people want to hug trees. Thank Putin for not seeing them all blown up in nuclear ash. It is. And so what's happening now is that the Russian nation is saying, we're done with this shadow boxing, hiding behind Ukraine as a punching bag. And so what could happen is that the breakouts that are coming on the line are coming, and the Europeans are talking openly about preparing to go to war with Russia by 2030. Merz of Germany, all these people are absolutely saying that they're going to go to war with Russia. And they don't have any conventional weapons left to do it, because those are also rusting on Ukrainian battlefields, destroyed by the Russians. They don't have, when you have no conventional weapons, and you will not, it'll take you years to build them. Like maybe you'll be ready in 2040 to go to war with the Russians. What do you have left? You have French nuclear weapons of 300 or so, and you have United Kingdom nuclear weapons, 300 or so. What do you have in America if all your conventional weapons you've expelled on Iran and Ukraine? You only have the nuclear option, and you can't go there. But anyway, Karaganov had this idea that he basically, being an Orthodox Christian, he said, it seems that we have to remind the Western leaders and give them the fear of God in nuclear war. So all the factories that are building drones across Europe, in the first stage will be, and this is all across Europe, about 40 of them in United Kingdom, France, a few in Spain, a lot of them in Germany and Poland. In less than 12 minutes, hypersonic missiles like the Oreshnik and these others, that the Avangard and these others that the Russians have perfected, which are 20 years ahead of anything we have. We don't even have hypersonic missiles, by the way. We didn't build them. We're 30 years behind. In 12 minutes, they could destroy all those factories with the Oreshniks and the others as a demonstration that you really have crossed our red line now. And when we are tolerant about you crossing them and you deem that to be us being weak, this red line you crossed, and we destroyed all those factories across Europe. You are now in the war that you have been fighting, hiding behind the very brave Ukrainian soldiers. Now, if your leadership doesn't get that message, Karaganov is saying, and he regrets it, he does not want it to happen because it's a very dangerous move. The Russians will then launch tactical nuclear weapons across Europe. Just a handful, just to get your attention. And when your attention's there, maybe you get your attention of your leaders who are openly talking about winning a war with Russia. What crack brain crack is that? It's just you can't. So this madness is part of the shofar thing. This is, and it spreads, to the, have you noticed there's a thread in this long period of we're talking about all these dates is there are certain actions and behaviors that are not settled and understood and transcended that only get more worse and more worse and escalating until here we are. And I'm having to talk about these nightmarish things because they're really close now. And, Nostradamus couldn't stop the civil wars of France, the religious civil wars, because he was punished for being no good prophet, and no accurate prophecy goes unpunished and ignored. And I'm in the same boat with all the things I have warned for most of my adult life are now coming to a fruition. And it's amazing because a lot of the places you saw me on, where I was in all the news, I was on coast to coast and all that, they've all closed their doors on me because what I said back in the 90s about the roaring 2020s and the things that could happen, they were entertaining then, but now you're living in these times, and rather than heed my warnings, people are trying to shut me out of your attention. So at least I haven't been burned at the stake yet, or nobody's done an effigy and burned me in front of somewhere. But so there's a little improvement in 4.7 centuries. But this is the situation. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to scare you straight.
Well, unfortunately, we did have a question, but they left at us X spaces, John, so we can't get the question that was going to
Well,
happen.
maybe they dropped the question and we're listening.
Maybe. It was Don, actually.
Oh, Don. Well, he listens.
No,
I think my sense is Don probably got his question answered.
maybe.
Don, you can email me and see if that's so.
So we're near the end of the show here, John. So if you can just explain the periodicals and the readings, and I just want to reiterate to the audience, in the description of this video, you can click the link that will take you to John's website. There's also a link where you can follow John on X. So please click those and sign up for the periodical and do a reading.
Yes, it's much easier to read on X at the moment. I'm still upgrading my website so it's cell phone friendly, but X is already set up for that. So I've started to post everything I have written since the beginning of 2025, and about a week from now, I'll have everything that I've written since then up. And I'm seeing a lot of hits, a lot of people reading it on X. So go over there. It's really easy to read and see the illustrations there. And I have the same donation subscription links if you so choose to join.
Okay, so all right, so everyone, please make sure that you click those links. And Don, I apologize.
I apologize too, Don.
I wanted to get the questions in.
This was a very unusual and intense session
No,
amongst many.
this one was a little bit more of an open session. I'm very worried about 2026 and 2027.
It should be. It's
Yeah,
the
just
world's future is on the verge.
yeah.
Or not the world. The world will survive us. The world has another 5 billion years of life. But if you
No,
don't want the human race to be replaced by a bunch of very intelligent, erudite cockroaches in a billion years, uh, please consider our future
all
and
right.
keep the cockroaches
I,
underfoot.
I don't feel that it's a man-made extinction event.
Yeah.
What I do feel is though it will be a tumultuous time period,
Yes.
and that tumultuous time period could last beyond 2027.
Oh,
It's
yes, it's
just that
going to
the curse
last.
comes in, and then we have to play out the curse, and that playing out of the curse could be five
There'll
years.
be 40 years of this.
Yeah, no, I could,
The-
I,
yeah, and that's why I talk about the last chance generation who are just being born now. By the time they're in their 20s, that'll be in the 2044, 2045, end of the 2020s. 2040s, they'll be starting to influence leadership roles in the 2050s and the 2060s. And I call them the last chance because this generation of souls that have come into the world may very well solve a lot of the problems and get the right contexts for us to solve those problems, because that's the one thing that can happen when things get really in your face. You've got to do something about them. When it's far away, if it's 1990 and you're hearing a guy talking about all these upheavals and things that are going to happen in the 2020s, oh, isn't that nice? I love to be entertained by being frightened by stuff I don't really think is ever going to happen. Well, now you're starting to see it happening, and you can't escape it. So embrace it. Embrace the change. Embrace taking a jump into new behaviors and patterns. Your life and the lives of your beloveds depend on it.
yeah, I've been so focused on just this year's Rosh Hashanah,
Yeah.
and I've been talking about this for over a year, right?
We
I
got to
didn't
have it,
realize,
Rabbi Ariel
I
on.
didn't realize that there's a consecutive.
Yeah, wasn't that actually,
Right
this has
now,
been an amazing
that's
show.
year.
We've had you've all shared a chance to see two people discover quite a interesting pattern live
No, this
on your
is
screen. And it's important. This is a little bit of prophetic history happening here. And
right.
now we got to bring in Rabbi Ariel Zadok.
I think so because
Yeah.
you know, there's some questions that I want to bring up. There's the red heifer, right? And the red
Yes.
heifer seemed to pop up during COVID,
Did.
right? And there was some discussion of part of the reason of October 7th was trying to prevent the red heifers from being slaughtered. Now, I've been told by scholarly sources that the reason why the red heifers were not ritually slaughtered were because there's no Sanhedrin. Now this goes all the way back to 1968 or so, around,
Mm,
and they talked about should they have a Sanhedrin or not. And
mm.
the seculars within Israel, the Zionists, didn't want the Sanhedrin because they didn't want to allow for the religious community to take hold. Now, at that time, the religious community, the Orthodox,
Yeah.
were a small percentage of the population,
Not anymore
right?
now.
And now it's growing. And so, but the thing is that if the Sanhedrin, the mistakes that were taking place with Israel in the early days, we are feeling the effects of it now.
Yeah.
And so, if the red heifers can't be ritually slaughtered, but they were supposed to,
Yeah.
and Israel was supposed to have the Sanhedrin in 68 or around that time period.
Yeah.
I could be a little bit off on the year, but it's around that time period. Then if it was supposed to happen, it's not. Then the thesis is strengthened that this big curse comes through.
Yeah.
And it could be literally the fall of Israel.
Yeah. No, it's very,
That
very
Israel
possible.
doesn't deserve. I'm looking at this from a metaphysical point of view.
Mm,
If Israel didn't they went through the Holocaust, they end up getting, some sort of statehood, and they were supposed to do certain things, but they didn't.
they didn't do
And
it.
and there was this big push
It,
in Israel to demonize the Orthodox and
Yeah.
push for secularism and all these things that were taking place. Plus,
Basically, Zionists are Trotskyites.
well, I believe, I think we talked about this. You
They're
said,
not religious. They're secular, and I just refer back to their quotes. Rabatinsky, one of the person who was the mentor of Menachem Begin and by extension Netanyahu, made a famous quote, and I saw many of the leaders of the Zionist movement make all the way back to Herzl, making the same statements, like which were basically like, it's not about God, it's not about the temple, it's about the land. So openly kind of saying, no, it's not about the Torah, it's not about, it's the land.
so that
That's a materialist.
this curse that potentially can happen in 2026 and 2027 could be related to the mistakes that were made in 68 or around that time period.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't rectified. And the opportunity to actually have the ritual slaughtering then can't take place. I mean, we got to keep this in mind that the last time that mankind had seen a red heifer was 2,000 years ago. This is not,
It
it's,
was 70 AD
you
when
know,
before the
yes,
Romans destroyed them all.
so the
And by the way, just to add,
Israel
that
doesn't.
millennial change when that's 2000 years ago is 2070.
Yeah, yeah. But the point here is that there was an opportunity for Israel to rectify its being and try to reach homeostasis with its neighbors, couldn't.
Yeah.
And now we're going into a realm where Israel might fall, but that doesn't mean that other countries in the region, like the GCC or Iran, rises either. They could fall too. This could be a world. I think we're in World War III already.
Well,
But
we've been in World War III since 2022, in my
right,
view.
right, right, exactly.
And it takes a while for people to understand that. A lot of people didn't call World War II until the end of 1941. It had been raging for over 2 years.
So I just feel that some of the mistakes that were made with Israel is coming to the fore, and I can see in how Netanyahu is going to try to deep six the potential peace agreement that leads to further conflict and further economic instability and further issues. And
Yeah.
so I see.
Being
I'm
Saul on
really,
steroids.
I'm really concerned
Yeah.
about these. When Rosh Hashanah coincides with the Sabbath, it's a problem. When Rosh Hashanah coincides with the Sabbath and it's on 9/11, it's even
Yeah.
more of a problem.
It's
And then when you have another one the next year,
yeah.
it's
Well,
there's no escaping the curse.
well, it's comeuppance time, and before I forget, it's very important to remember 1967, the Six-Day War. That was a core shift in Israel's destiny, which really required the debate about secular and religious Jews coming together to happen, because suddenly Israel had all this, had the temptation or the realization of expansion, and that was a crossroads. When they took back the Wailing Wall and that was a very significant event in a crossroads in Israel's future. Um, and I remember as a kid when it happened, I could feel it. It was like, wow. When I saw the soldiers coming in, and I have a picture of the soldiers that are seeing the Wailing Wall face to face, these when they were fighting with the Jordanians in the streets of Jerusalem. And it brought an opportunity, but it also brought a problem, because this is the problem that has made this first attempt to create an Israeli Jewish state so wrong, so not balanced. It was a robbery. It was a thievery. It was too soon. We've talked about this, how the Torah and some other prophecies say that it's like 2400s is when the Jews will really truly be invited, and it'd be right to come back. This was a rape and a pillage. The Nakba, the 700 villages, the 700,000 Palestinians, of which most of them went into Gaza, and then from Egypt, that used to be held by Egypt, and that ended up being this open concentration camp, this Palestinian ghetto. Then this perversion happened where rather than SS guards over the Warsaw ghetto, Israeli Jews became the SS guards. And that, now, there's some people. I have one of my favorite sources is Gideon Levy, who's a reporter, long time in Haaretz, and he was just on recently uh, with with Tucker Carlson, and he's a very lonely man in a world where most of his friends, and he's talking about how there's this like madness, where people just want to not hear about it. They don't want to hear what's going on in Gaza. They don't even think it's there. And there's a lot of denial going on in Israel. And, I think he's one of the few people who would have liked to have had that discussion, and that important discussion that should have happened after 67, before the 70s happened, before Yom Kippur War happened and all that, because it didn't happen. I mean, the red heifer debate didn't happen. And in fact, well, what happened was the Zionists are not religious. They don't even believe in God. Most of them, they're
Right. I mean, it
atheists.
was almost like it was the state of
This is not
Israel.
how Israel comes back to the
Right,
promised land, as
exactly. I mean, the
atheists.
state of Israel was almost trying to create an extinction of the Orthodoxy.
Yeah, which is
I mean,
which is
you know,
perverse.
yeah,
It's perverse.
The Zionist movement that was taking place literally wanted to throw away
Yeah,
the religion and
yeah.
just become secular. And this is part of the reason why Israel has that kind of European feel.
Yes,
You know, there's a European.
absolutely. Well, it's like, if you throw away all of that, what is Israel without it?
Right.
It's it's a country that may go the same fate as the Amalekites.
Right, right. Just imagine, just imagine the Godhead, coming,
Yeah,
and questioning individuals, the Jewish people, in its totality, and say, okay, you were given the land, all right, you had this land opportunity for the land, but look at what you did. Internally, there was strife. You didn't even have a Sanhedrin.
yeah, that's right.
You promoted this lifestyle that was antithetical to Jewish tradition and
Yeah,
Jewish teaching, and given the opportunity to slaughter the red heifers, you could have had you had many years to prepare for this, so you could set up the Sanhedrin,
yeah.
right, while you were still watching the red heifers to make sure that they were pure enough for ritual
Mhm.
slaughtering. Decided not to do that. I mean, think about this conversation we're talking about with the Sanhedrin is hinted within the Israeli politic with its Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Where they're having an infighting of what the composition should be. So God, basically says, "Do you deserve to be blessed or not?" This is why I keep on saying there's a curse coming. But
It's the
curse
Babylonian
just on
captivity.
Israel.
It's a
This is
second diaspora. It's
it, it,
coming.
it can be. It could very well be.
And
Um,
then it will be 2020, the 24th century before people can come back the right way,
yeah,
the the godly way.
yeah, I
And
agree.
then they'd be welcomed. They would be welcomed by the Palestinians and the Arabs. I mean, look how people who were not lost in that just when they started coming in the teens and the 20s and the 30s. I mean, Golda Meir came in the 20s, and the Palestinians were welcoming, they were helping. Brother and sister Semites were actually helping people. And I mean, I've even heard stories in the Negev where the Palestinians saw that some of the Zionists coming, this is now later, they even helped them then. And during the 40s and said, "Oh, actually, that's a good place to live, but you're not going to get water there, so you can share our wells that are down off this hill." And they said, "Oh, thanks very much." And then what did they do? The Nakba came, they killed and cast all those people who helped them out of the Negev. This is not the way to behave godly. Like, this is not. And there will be consequences if you do dark things shall come tenfold upon you.
Exactly. So, that's looking at it from the Godhead point of view. And then just think about it from just a secular, worldly point of view. Try to have a peace agreement with Iran. All right.
Yeah.
Try to de-escalate and take the off ramp.
Yeah.
Netanyahu says no and starts bombing.
Yeah.
The peace agreement is destroyed.
Yep.
And then any goodwill that people had for Israel is now eroded in the United States to the point where Israel won't have any partner in the region.
It'll be all alone with its
Right.
hate.
Right.
When you
And
hate like that, you're all eventually alone, and all you've got left is your sins and your hate.
Netanyahu is playing, a big poker game here.
Ugh. Well, Adolf Hitler, the only person I've ever seen since Hitler who was a great gambler and gambled big and almost made it. I mean, he was a miracle worker with his gambles. And then he had his Iran to face, which was the Soviet Union. And he was like, "Oh, we're so close. We get the Soviet Union, it'll all be done. We just kick the door down, the whole rotten Bolshevik edifice will come crumbling down, and we'll do it in 15 weeks." As good a gambler as you get, you finally shoot craps. And Netanyahu is shooting craps right now. And it's so ironic because he's Jewish and there's so many things that I think make him more a Hitler figure than anybody else I've seen. How ironic as a Jewish person. It's coming to an end soon.
Mm-hmm. There was a quick question from
Oh.
David, but he mentioned that didn't they already sacrifice the red heifer last year? And the problem with that story was, one, they were doing a practice run.
It is a practice run, yeah.
And secondly, it wasn't on Mount Olive. It has to be on Mount Olive.
Should be
And
on
the Sanhedrin has to be established before the sacrifice. And the Sanhedrin is not established, so it can't be done. So
it's the heifer before the cart.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. Heifer before the Sanhedrin cart.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there's a series of things that are supposed to take place, and the scholars in Israel, the religious scholars in Israel, know this, and they should have been taking a leadership role to establish it, but they were afraid. And so this is part of the reason why that the Orthodox community will get the curse that I'm talking about, because they did not do what they were supposed to do. Take a leadership role, go against the Zionist movement that was eroding the tradition and promoting secularism in the society.
And when you succumb to the bullies, don't blame them.
Right. But the thing is that
you are the problem.
Seculars will also be cursed within Israel. So it's the religious community and the seculars will be cursed. And then all the people that were for the war in the Middle East, I'm talking post October 7th, or against the war in the Middle East, because we can't get our act together to find peace in the world. We're all going to be judged on this.
Yeah. It's a global issue.
No one is going to be able to say, "I am pure enough and shouldn't be cursed." Everyone is going to have some level of hardship because of what has happened.
What happened to the Sanhedrin when the Romans were breaking down the walls of Jerusalem and the temple? They were probably, we'll keep them from coming in, and they couldn't, and the temple was utterly destroyed as Jesus predicted.
Right.
Not a single stone left standing.
To be totally honest, I would not be surprised that during this tumultuous time period that we're talking about between 2026 and 2027, that I'm not predicting this, but I'm just saying
You
I'd be
wouldn't be
surprised.
surprised if, yeah.
Netanyahu's assassinated.
Or he dies of his stage 4 cancer. He's not looking well. He's losing weight. I know he's got two doctors with him all the time. And, he had to get that operation that happens, a very extreme operation that happens because of prostate cancer. And so, he could die.
That's a
Uh,
good point. That might
I
be.
mean, I can't. I mean, I admire the force of will this man has. That he just keeps it going. I mean, I don't like it. I don't support it, but I have to say, well, that's a significant human being who has such a willpower, uh, kind of like Hitler, you know, that he just can't be defeated, and absolute moxie of it is just that. But then you get defeated.
Just to wrap this up, but
Hmm.
I think that inflection point when Trump was starting to push back on Netanyahu about, him wrecking the peace agreements and continually bombing Beirut and all this. I think that's an inflection point of where the American public is now. Any goodwill that Israel did have is fast eroding.
Oh, it's the polls. I
And
mean,
that's in the Jewish community and
yeah.
the non-Jewish community.
Well, and especially in the Jewish community who don't see Zionists as their representation any more than Germans didn't see Nazi Germans as their representatives, because this is threatening everybody. It reminds me of a story. My mother, I'll close with this. She was in New York doing a show, The Red Mill, and she got to know this Jewish deli guy, who's a really sweet guy. And I mean, there was this, let's just call him this schlemiel that came in, and he was just being rude and nasty. And then this calm Jewish delicatessen guy just said it. He looked at him and said, it's Jews like you who make so much trouble for Jews like me. You know, what to do? The schlemiels are out there. And the schmucks.
There's a problem. And
Yeah, it's a problem.
it goes both ways. Sometimes, there's too much of this religious push,
Yep,
and that causes a problem. But there's
it
also
does.
too much of this secular push that causes.
That's right. Yeah, and it's also converging not just in Jewish time clocks with the shofar. I mean, it's also the 2000-year anniversary of Christ, and that stirred up a lot of issues for the Sanhedrin and stuff. Is coming to its 2000-year anniversary, and then followed by the destruction of Jerusalem in 2070's 2000 anniversary. And this shift. Now, it's very interesting that there's a very interesting prophecy from the Catholic mystic uh, from Calabria, Joachim di Fiore, where he defined, I'll finish on this, my part is he had this vision that the good news or the mission of God's teaching to the human race has three 20-century long ages that are named after the Holy Trinity. The first was the age of the Father, Jehovah, followed by the age of the Son, Christ, 20 centuries. That actually didn't end in 2000. That is ending 33 years later in 2033. And the transition from the age of the Son to the third and final 20 centuries, the age of the Holy Spirit, where even Kabbalists are saying that we're not going to build a new temple. And when God's connection to you is direct, your heart is the third temple. That's a statement right out of the age of the Holy Spirit.
Well, I mean,
And there's a lot of religions who are coming around to that, different faiths all around, that are kind of coming to this idea of direct contact of God, not through a middleman or middlewoman, or even through a Sanhedrin, but something where God's mission and mystery is sent direct. And well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But we're living in times where a great age of possibly of God's message to the world is coming into its Holy Spirit age with anniversaries of Jesus on the cross and the third temple burning and being destroyed, or the second temple being
Well,
destroyed
it's
by the Romans.
it's interesting you say that because it could be during this historic event that you're talking about. This is where the Dome of the Rock gets taken down.
Oh yes, I'll be
And
very,
then years later, there's like this new beginning that was
yes,
supposed to be, but never
yeah,
came to fruition. And yeah, maybe
maybe.
people can say that maybe the third temple was the Dome of the Rock. I don't know. I'm not a scholar of that order.
Well, there's many from
I don't.
Rabbi Ariel is my source for this, and I've also seen in other sources. He also confirmed that to me that a lot of Kabbalists definitely are already seeing the temple as they're not calling it what the Calabrian monk called it, but they're talking in ways that are kind of open to this idea of the divine's direct, the godliness is divine connection to the human race and each individual if they open it to it. So, the temple is now in your heart. And where else should it be?
Yeah.
Should it be a thing of stone or should it be a thing of life at its very core, lived?
Well, we're at that time and we have to shut down. But
Yes.
I just want to remind the audience, please click the link in the description that will take you to John's X page now, and also to his website. Sign up for the periodicals and the readings, and help John out by supporting his work.
Your support is what makes all this happen. So if you can, whatever you can give, uh, it will be much appreciated and much help for my voice not to be silenced.
All right. So everyone, thank you for joining. Greatly appreciate it. And John, if you're listening, sorry we weren't able to get to your
Sorry,
question
Don. Next time.
next. Okay, so say goodbye to everybody, John.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.